Imagine if the greatest mysteries of Christendom weren't hidden beneath the gilded altars of Rome's grand cathedrals or within the heavily guarded vaults of Paris. What if the truth lay beneath the shifting tides of a quiet, almost unnoticed island far across the sea? This story will delve into one of history's most captivating and enduring enigmas, one that continues to baffle researchers and adventurers worldwide. The focus is on Oak Island, a tiny speck of land off the coast of Nova Scotia, so small it's easily missed on most maps, yet burdened by centuries of rumors, speculation, and reverent whispers. Could this unassuming dot on the map be the final resting place for relics once guarded by medieval Europe's most powerful and later persecuted order, the Knights Templar? Imagine standing on the shore, the salty air settling on your skin, gulls crying overhead like the restless spirits of ages past. The waters of Mahone Bay gleam with an unnatural stillness, as if they themselves hold something unspoken, hidden from prying eyes. Beneath their mirrored surface, deep within the soil of this unassuming island, a secret may lie buried that could completely rewrite our understanding of the past. This intriguing question has tormented treasure seekers and historians for over 2 centuries. What truly lies beneath Oak Island? Is it gold, jewels, and crowns, riches enough to tempt even the most powerful monarchs? Or is it something far stranger, far more dangerous, something hidden with such meticulous care and at such a cost? The mystery of Oak Island isn't merely about material wealth. It's about a potential discovery that could alter the very fabric of historical narrative. For years, a wide array of theories has emerged, each adding new layers to this already convoluted story. Some whisper of a secret library of forbidden gospels, containing lost or hidden texts that could challenge orthodox dogma. Others speak of relics plundered from Jerusalem during the Crusades, among which might be the Holy Grail itself, a legendary cup, or perhaps something more symbolic. There are even those who propose the Ark of the Covenant is stored here, a biblical artifact of incredible power. But there's an even bolder belief that what is hidden isn't an object, but knowledge, proof of a bloodline that has survived centuries, meticulously protected by the Templars and buried in silence, far from the eyes of the curious and powerful. But let us not rush in our attempt to unravel this centuries-old puzzle. To walk this path, we must slow our steps and listen carefully to the whispers that break through the lines of official history. We must trace the delicate threads left by vanished orders and forgotten journeys, threads that drift like seaweed just beneath the surface of historical tides. Every clue is fragile, every possibility tantalizing, and together they weave a tale that speaks as much of profound faith and treacherous betrayal as it does of untold riches. The Knights Templar were once more than just a military order. They were powerful custodians of Christendom, equally feared and revered across Europe and the Holy Land. They marched under the banner of the Red Cross, protected pilgrims on the perilous journey to Jerusalem, and built a colossal financial empire that eventually threatened kings and even popes themselves. Their influence was unprecedented, their wealth legendary. However, in 1307, the world suddenly turned against them. Overnight, on October 13th, their leaders were seized across France, their order dissolved, and their alleged sins, heresy, blasphemy, idolatry, proclaimed to the world. But beneath the cloak of these accusations and the flames of the pyres lay a quieter, more ominous suspicion. What if their true crime wasn't worshipping demons or defiling the cross, but protecting something the Church itself could not control, something that would undermine its very foundations? As the Templars were persecuted, their ships mysteriously vanished from French harbors. Historical records indicate that entire fleets slipped away into the night, their cargo unknown. Where did they go? Some historians suggest that part of the fleet might have sailed to Scotland, where the order held significant influence and managed to avoid immediate persecution. Others point to Portugal, where the Templars were reorganized under a different name. But there's a bolder, almost fantastical theory that posits at least some of these ships sailed west, beyond the horizon, to lands only vaguely mentioned in ancient maps and sailors' tales. Could it be that they reached the shores of North America more than a century before Christopher Columbus officially discovered it in 1492? And if so, could Oak Island have become their meticulously planned vault, their final sanctuary for what they deemed most precious? As a reminder, crucial conclusions linking all these mysteries will be presented at the end of this video, so be sure to watch until the very end. And if you wish to discover more captivating stories, a link to new videos can be found in the description. We sincerely appreciate every viewer, and your support is vital for the channel's growth. Please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. This helps us create even more engaging content. Let's consider the peculiar and astonishing nature of this mystery. When boys first began digging on Oak Island in 1795, they didn't unearth scattered treasure, as one might expect from a pirate's hoard. Instead, they stumbled upon a meticulously engineered shaft, a sort of well descending deep underground. Within this shaft, placed every 10 feet, approximately 3 meters, were wooden platforms made of oak logs. These were clear signs of deliberate human construction, indicating that someone had built downwards with a specific, preconceived purpose. This was no mere burial of hastily interred gold. This was complex architecture, an elaborate defense, a structure designed to preserve something at all costs for centuries, perhaps even millennia. And as the searchers delved deeper, water surged through what appeared to be artificial tunnels leading directly from the sea. The island seemed to come alive, actively resisting intrusion, guarding its secrets. Such ingenuity raises many questions. Who, centuries before modern engineering, could have created such elaborate flood tunnels and perhaps even booby-trapped shafts on a remote island? Few possessed such knowledge and resources, and even fewer such a powerful motive. And it is here that the whispers return to the Templars. Known for their mastery in constructing magnificent cathedrals and castles, steeped in secrets and burdened with relics too dangerous to reveal, they might well have hidden their treasures here, beyond the reach of royal power or ecclesiastical persecution. But what is this treasure? This question persists, continuing to torment the minds of seekers. Was it merely gold, the untold riches of a fallen order that they couldn't leave to their enemies' mercy? Or was it something far greater, something that transcends material value? Some researchers believe that the Holy Grail was never a simple cup, but a symbol, a bloodline, a genealogical lineage tracing back to Christ himself, which, if revealed, could shake the foundations of Christendom. Others point to the Ark of the Covenant, said to unleash divine power upon those who possess it, and whose presence in Europe would have been catastrophically destabilizing. Both would have been too dangerous to leave in Europe, too tempting for kings and too threatening for popes, making a remote island the ideal sanctuary. And so we return to the waves, lapping at the shores of Oak Island. They move with the patience of centuries, as if waiting for something. Waiting for searchers brave enough to dig, patient enough to question, or perhaps foolish enough to disturb what was meant to remain hidden. For over 200 years, treasure hunters, scholars, historians, and countless dreamers have come here, each convinced they stood on the verge of the greatest revelation. Yet, despite all efforts and sacrifices, the island continues to hold its silence, guarding a mystery that perhaps awaits its destined hour to change the world. Perhaps Oak Island was never meant to reveal its innermost truths. Perhaps its true purpose was to be a guardian of the secret, a way to ensure its inviolability until the destined hour arrived. Or perhaps the true treasure isn't hidden within the earth, but in the unending contemplation, in the widening ripples of questions that intertwine the fates of medieval knights with the ambitions of modern adventurers, ancient relics with long-forgotten journeys, and the fine line between faith and doubt. The mystery lurking beneath the water's surface extends far beyond a simple question of what is buried. It delves into the motives for concealment and the identities of those who sought to keep it silent. As one delves deeper into the annals of Oak Island's history, they find themselves on a precarious boundary between history and legend, between what has been irrevocably erased by time and what still whispers in every tide. Let the roar of the ocean waves guide your thoughts, urging you to follow the barely discernible trail of clues. For if Oak Island truly holds the relics of the Knights Templar, then beneath its soil lies not merely wealth, but the very heart of a long-forgotten human history. The year was 1795. One could imagine a warm summer evening in Nova Scotia, the air thick with the scent of pine and the chirping of crickets carrying across Mahone Bay. 3 young explorers were wandering on Oak Island when their eyes were drawn to an unusual sight, hidden beneath the sprawling branches of ancient oak trees. The ground in this spot seemed disturbed, as if someone had long ago carried out some work there. And above the surface of the soil, a curious depression, resembling a shallow pit, was visible. Nearby, according to old legends, spectral lights sometimes flickered, shimmering lanterns moving in the night, as if someone or something continued to vigilantly watch over this place. The boys were gripped by curiosity. Armed with youthful fearlessness and the thrill that invariably accompanies mystery, they began to dig. What they discovered was far from an ordinary patch of ground. Barely a few feet down, they hit a stone, and then a layer of logs. Beneath these logs lay another layer of soil, and then wood again. All of this was done with astonishing precision, almost as if someone had planned it centuries before. Each new discovery only deepened the overall mystery. Who would undertake such colossal efforts on a remote island, so far from the great powers of Europe? Their shovels rang out, echoing the mystery, creating a rhythm that seemed to match their growing excitement. But with it, an unease also grew. This place didn't seem like a natural formation. It looked constructed, like a door designed for secure guarding. The soil was too compact, and the logs too orderly. Someone had created this pit with a specific intent. Someone wanted it found, or perhaps not found at all. Digging deeper, sweating under the scorching summer sun, the young men repeatedly encountered logs at 10 feet, then 20, then 30. The layers seemed endless, each separated by soil and each urging them to continue, as if this pit was designed to test their resolve to its limits. To many, it became known as the money pit. Though even in the earliest accounts, people suspected it held something far more valuable than mere coins or jewels. News of the unusual find quickly spread through the small communities nestled along the Nova Scotia coast. Whispers of buried treasure traveled from one hearth to another, accompanied by tales of pirates and kings. Some claimed it could be the lost fortune of Captain Kidd, the notorious privateer. Others suggested it was the plunder of long-forgotten corsairs who sought refuge in these hidden coves. But as the stories grew more numerous and convoluted, a more unsettling question arose. What if this wasn't the work of pirates at all? What if it was the work of a secret fraternity, one that possessed profound knowledge of engineering, of symbols, of mysteries far older and deeper than gold? Even in those early days, the pit exuded a distinct aura, transcending a mere treasure hunt. There was a certain weight to it, an uncanny sense of deliberate intent. Local fishermen spoke of strange sounds carried across the water at night, echoes like singing or distant bells. Old Mi'kmaq tales even hinted that the island was unsafe, that its soil carried curses brought from across the sea. But the boys didn't stop. With each wooden platform they uncovered, they felt they were nearing something monumental, something that could change their understanding of the world. The pit became a challenge, a complex puzzle, an alluring invitation. Yet it was also a warning. With every foot they descended, the island seemed to resist, as if reminding them that what was buried here was not meant to be disturbed by unworthy hands. The legend of Oak Island was born that summer, from curiosity and courage, from earth and silence, and once the whispers began, they could not be contained. From small fishing villages to the halls of wealthy investors, news of the mysterious pit spread like wildfire. Adventurers arrived, shovels in hand and cherished dreams in their hearts, convinced they stood on the brink of a grand discovery. But Oak Island is a patient keeper. It allows glimpses of its secrets, offers hints, promises untold riches, but never reveals the full truth. The initial dig in 1795 yielded no gold, no ancient relics, only a multitude of new questions. And questions, as often turns out, possess far greater power than answers. For what is hidden beneath the island belongs not merely to the earth, it belongs to history itself. And history, when buried, resists with all its might, unwilling to be easily unearthed. By the early 19th century, the mystery of Oak Island had deeply embedded itself in people's minds. Whispers of strange subterranean layers, of logs laid like steps in a hidden staircase, had spread far beyond Nova Scotia's quiet fishing communities. News reached wealthy individuals, eager for adventure and renown, who soon gathered the necessary funds and tools to continue where the three young explorers had left off. Thus began the era of the first deliberate excavations of the site, which would forever be known as the Money Pit. Imagine this gripping and arduous scene: a dozen or so laborers, their sturdy boots sinking deep into the damp, yielding earth, their hands, already calloused, tirelessly wielding picks and shovels, breaking through stubborn layers of soil. Their labor was neither chaotic nor aimless. With astonishing regularity, every 10 feet of their painstaking efforts, the same ominous and intriguing pattern would appear before them: neatly arranged logs, laid crosswise, like ancient markers denoting invisible thresholds or hidden levels. Evidently, these discoveries were not a whim of nature or the result of natural processes. It became increasingly clear someone had deliberately constructed this complex structure. The creator, it seemed, intended for any unwelcome visitor to notice every step, yet be deprived of the ability to complete their perilous descent. As the men delved deeper, the pit transformed, ceasing to be a mere hole in the ground. It became a kind of portal into silence, a journey leading to the understanding of the will of unseen but powerful architects. The air around grew noticeably cooler, and sunlight gradually gave way to twilight. Every faint creak of the logs echoed in the workers' minds, generating an uneasy premonition that they were intruding upon a carefully concealed ancient design. Reaching the 90-foot mark, the shaft proved deeper than any they had ever seen, yet it stubbornly refused to yield its treasures, offering only new, even more perplexing riddles. Then came a discovery that fundamentally changed the entire nature of the search. Among the layers of earth and ancient wood, the diggers stumbled upon a flat stone inscribed with very strange markings. These symbols, though crude, conveyed a clear intentionality, resembling nothing familiar or comprehensible to these men. Later generations of researchers and enthusiasts claimed the stone bore a message: 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. However, a legitimate question arose. What if this message wasn't originally meant to be so straightforward and obvious? What if its true meaning lay not in money, but in a warning, in guarding something so sacred it couldn't even be spoken aloud? Despite the multiplying mysteries, the laborers continued their arduous work. With each new level they surmounted, their expectations soared. The deeper they penetrated the earth, the stronger their conviction grew that untold riches awaited them just beyond the next layer. However, the island itself seemed to have entirely different, unknown plans for them. At a depth of 90 feet, precisely as excitement and anticipation reached their peak, water began to seep into the shaft. At first, it was a barely perceptible trickle. Then it transformed into a powerful torrent, gushing through the invisible, hidden veins of the island itself. The shaft instantly filled with cold, unstoppable seawater, as if the awakened earth itself rose to defend its secrets. This was clearly neither a collapse of loose soil nor a simple geological accident. Subsequent, larger-scale excavations revealed a startling truth. Tunnels had been deliberately cut from the bay directly to the pit, their purpose clearly to flood it should anyone dare to delve too deep. This was no mere hidden cache. What confronted the explorers was a secretly built fortress, its defense system designed with an ingenuity centuries ahead of its time. A legitimate question arose: who could have engineered such a marvel? Could it have been pirates, driven only by greed but with meager engineering skills? Or was it the work of a highly organized, disciplined fraternity, equally adept at complex construction and the art of concealment? Perhaps the very fraternity that mysteriously vanished from Europe under the cloak of persecution in the early 14th century. The men made desperate attempts to pump out the surging water. They also tried to dig shafts in close proximity to the main pit, hoping to bypass the trap. However, every attempt invariably ended in complete failure. The island, it seemed, refused to yield, stubbornly guarding its secrets. The treasure, undoubtedly, was somewhere there, so close they could almost feel its presence. But it was securely protected by the most powerful force, the sea. Many of those who dared challenge the island eventually left its shores frustrated, ruined, and ridiculed by their neighbors, who saw only recklessness and folly in their pursuit. Nevertheless, the mysterious allure of the money pit never waned, for in every new collapse, in every painful defeat, the diggers sensed the presence of something far greater than themselves, something that weighed heavily on their dreams and ambitions. This was no longer a simple treasure hunt. It seemed they had stumbled upon an ancient game, played long before them, a game whose rules were eternally etched in deep mystery, and whose guardians had long vanished into the annals of history. Even today, one can vividly imagine them resting in the night's silence, by the dim, flickering light of lanterns, gazing into the dark, bottomless maw of the pit. The earth around seemed to breathe in unison with their hearts, as if in tense anticipation. The men whispered quietly among themselves, wondering, what lies down there? Gold, priceless relics, or something far older than human memory itself, hidden with such unprecedented meticulousness that even centuries proved powerless to reveal this secret. Thus began these excavations, and with them, the legend of Oak Island acquired its own unique life. This was no longer just a story of buried plunder, but an overarching enigma stretching across oceans and centuries, relentlessly calling to those willing to risk everything for just a glimpse of the forbidden. However, the first true battle between human perseverance and the island's impregnability unfolded not with shovels and picks, but through the element of water. Imagine this dramatic scene: exhausted diggers standing at the very edge of the pit, their faces smeared with earth, their muscles aching from weeks of heavy, grueling labor. At a depth of 90 feet, their hearts pounded with anticipation of the long-awaited discovery. At any moment, they expected to hit the final layers of wood and stone, concealing a coveted vault filled with gold, jewels, or perhaps something far more mysterious and unusual. But then a sinister sound reached their ears, the slow, alarming hiss of water beginning to seep through the earth. Within hours, this barely perceptible trickle transformed into an unstoppable torrent. The pit rapidly filled, as if the sea itself had been summoned to fulfill some ancient mission. Pumps were immediately brought in, rather primitive machines of the early 19th century, capable of only partially resisting the elements. But no matter how diligently and selflessly the men worked, pumping out the water, it returned with renewed force. It mattered not how quickly they bailed it out. The pit, it seemed, had taken on a life of its own, determined to forever drown its innermost secret. What they didn't yet realize was that their struggle was not against chance, but against an intricate system of deliberately created flood tunnels, artfully carved channels that directly connected the money pit to the boundless ocean. Much later, during subsequent investigations, future generations discovered layers of compacted coconut fiber and eelgrass in the Smith's Cove area. These strange materials, completely foreign to the local environment, functioned as effective natural filters for seawater, steadily drawing it into the pit through carefully concealed inlets. These were not merely natural geological formations. They were the result of someone's deliberate and malevolent design. The island itself, it turned out, was designed with the sole purpose of securely concealing whatever rested within its depths. But who could have been behind such an outlandish marvel? Certainly, it wasn't the work of common pirates. Corsairs, hastily hiding their plunder, preferred to stash trophies in unremarkable caves or shallow burials, not in shafts nearly 100 feet deep that were also protected by complex water traps. The origin of this construction pointed to something far more sophisticated and deliberate. It suggested profound knowledge of engineering, hydrology, and an exceptional architectural cunning, centuries ahead of its time. And it is here that the whispers return to the Templars. For who, other than the Templars, exiled from Europe and desperately seeking to hide their most sacred possessions, would possess both the powerful motive and the unique skills to create such a monumental vault? Their architects built impregnable fortresses in Jerusalem, constructed commanderies across Europe, and castles capable of withstanding sieges by entire armies. Could Oak Island have been their last redoubt, their most secret stronghold, built not of stone towers but of hidden chambers tucked deep underground? The flooding of the shaft itself became a powerful symbol. It seemed that the treasure, whatever it was, possessed its own will, its own stubborn refusal to be claimed. Every attempt to drain this enigmatic site invariably failed. Digging additional shafts only led to new collapses, and water rushed in again, cold and relentless. People cursed the treacherous island, yet at the same time felt an involuntary respect for it seemed less a place and more a powerful guardian. The story of it quickly spread. The island, people said, was cursed. Some believed the water was enchanted, that the sea itself was bound by invisible ties to protect the hidden relics. Others saw in the ingenious tunnels the hand of a secret society, one that understood not only how to construct such fortifications, but also why they were vitally necessary. And so the flood tunnels became more than mere obstacles. They transformed into symbols of a deeper truth. Oak Island was never going to yield easily. Its mystery was designed to outlast generations of seekers. Every attempt to penetrate its heart met with stubborn resistance, as if history itself guarded its impregnable threshold. Even today, with modern machinery rumbling above ground, the problem remains unchanged. Pumps work tirelessly, drills penetrate deep, but the waters still return, flooding the shaft as relentlessly as they did 2 centuries ago. It's as if the Templars themselves whispered through time, "This is not for you." What if the water isn't merely an obstacle, but a message? A reminder that what was buried here was intended for eternal safekeeping, not for discovery. What if this flooding is the island's way of saying the world isn't yet ready for what lies within its depths? The flood tunnels awakened on that fateful day in 1804 and have never slept since. And in their endless tide, they remind us of something ominous. Sometimes the earth itself conspires to keep a secret. As the water rose, and with it, hope seemingly sank, one enigmatic discovery remained, haunting everyone who set foot on these lands. At a depth of about 90 feet, before the shaft was completely submerged by seawater, the diggers extracted a single stone slab from the earth, heavy, rectangular, and unusually smooth. Carved upon it were signs, symbols that none of the men present could decipher. This stone resembled nothing ever seen in Nova Scotia. Its surface was perfectly flat, as if carved by skilled hands, not eroded by time. The symbols engraved upon it were neither English, French, Mi'kmaq, nor Norse script. They were something entirely different, strange hieroglyphs that seemed to hint at a cipher. Some claimed the markings were arranged in neat rows, almost like a coherent sentence. Others swore they saw crosses interwoven into the overall pattern. The slab was raised and later displayed above a fireplace in a local home, where it became the subject of endless debate and speculation. Over time, one purported interpretation emerged: 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. This was a tantalizing promise that sustained the Oak Island fever for generations. However, many now suspect this translation was never authentic. After all, why would someone go to such lengths to meticulously bury treasure only to leave a tablet announcing its value? Perhaps the markings were never meant to be read by outsiders. Perhaps it was a cipher, a warning, or even a ritual seal intended to guard the vault. Some researchers note that the symbols resemble codes used by early Freemasons, who themselves, at least by legend, were heirs to Templar secrets. Could it be that the stone was not a key, but a barrier, a marker that said, "Here lies something sacred. Touch at your peril"? Imagine the diggers, huddled around a campfire's light, staring at the stone as shadows danced across its surface. The symbols seemed alive in the flickering light, whispering to them of secrets just beyond reach. Did they wonder if they had encountered not a coveted treasury, but something far more formidable and potentially ruinous, a relic that perhaps should never again see the light of day? Over the long centuries, the stone in question vanished without a trace. Some claim it was lost to the depths of time, while others insist it met with destruction. However, a small group of people remains firmly convinced of its continued existence, believing it to be securely hidden by someone fearful of its potential implications. All that remains of it are schematic drawings, detailed descriptions, and the unsettling premonition that it carried a message whose significance surpassed the value of mere gold. If this slab's authenticity is assumed, it points to Oak Island not as a mere site of pirate activities or hidden riches, but as a territory marked by codified intent. Someone, centuries before us, didn't just hide something, but left behind a complex system of symbols, a language intended exclusively for those who already possessed the key to its understanding, and who, in the annals of history, was most skilled in creating and deciphering codes, in using secret signs, in preserving hidden knowledge. The answer is swift: the Knights Templar. Their temples were marked with crosses that simultaneously served as maps pointing to something greater. They buried their innermost secrets within symbols, legible only to the initiated. Their extensive legacy subsequently passed into Masonic lodges, in the form of whispered traditions that spanned continents. The question arises: could the Oak Island stone have become another, previously unknown link in this carefully concealed chain? The stone itself may no longer be extant, but its memory lives on. It silently tells us that what is hidden beneath Oak Island was not an accident, not a mere coincidence, but a deliberate act, meticulously sealed with signs intended to convey information across centuries. But to whom was this message intended? To us, the curious researchers intruding upon others' secrets, or to descendants, guardians who still await the day this great mystery will be revealed? Beneath the ever-shifting earth, the stone symbols continue to silently resonate, using the language of shadows and faint whispers. And perhaps, in their silence, They tell us that Oak Island's true treasure is not what was buried, but history itself, an eternal question that refuses to fade. By the mid-19th century, the enigma of Oak Island had ceased to be merely a local curiosity. It had transformed into a genuine obsession, gripping the minds of many. Every unsuccessful excavation, every sudden ground collapse, every flood only deepened this intriguing puzzle. And with each new generation, the question grew relentlessly. Who could have erected such an incredibly complex system of traps and tunnels many centuries before European settlers even charted these shores? Pirates, some surmised. Captain Kidd, or perhaps Blackbeard, known for stashing their plunder in forgotten coves. However, the sheer sophistication of the so-called money pit simply didn't align with the image of hasty and careless buccaneers. Pirates typically buried their treasures shallowly, intending to return for them within a few years, not centuries. The labyrinth of Oak Island was different. It was designed to protect something for countless ages, to withstand not only potential thieves, but also the corrosive effects of time itself. It was for this reason that whispers around the mysterious island turned to the Knights Templar. The Templars, these warrior monks of the 12th and 13th centuries, were far more than mere soldiers of the cross. They proved themselves as exceptional master builders, astute financiers, and brilliant engineers. They erected impregnable fortresses across the Holy Land, excavated hidden tunnels beneath sacred Jerusalem, and developed complex water systems that still baffle modern archaeologists. If anyone possessed the skill and knowledge to dig secret flood channels beneath a remote island, it was undoubtedly them. But a legitimate question arises: why here? Why Nova Scotia, a land completely unknown to Europe in the Middle Ages? Or perhaps it was known after all. Some researchers suggest that the Templars, fleeing persecution in 1307, sent their fleet west from La Rochelle. Ships vanished from French ports, and their cargo was never documented. Could they have crossed the Atlantic long before Columbus's voyages, carrying relics too dangerous to fall into the hands of kings or popes? It's worth carefully considering the timeline of events. In 1307, King Philip IV of France took decisive action to completely destroy the Templar order, confiscating their vast wealth and declaring them heretics. Overnight, the most powerful order in Christendom became outcasts. However, their untold treasures, their extensive archives, and possibly their most sacred relics were never found. If one assumes they transported these valuables on the aforementioned ships, then the strictest secrecy demanded hiding them in such a remote and inaccessible place where no king could reach. And what of Oak Island's defenses? They resemble not a haphazard pirate's hoard, but rather a fortress without visible walls, an intricate trap of earth and water, designed to guard something sacred. Could this be the Templars' last stronghold, built not to protect people, but to preserve a great secret? The evidence supporting this hypothesis is circumstantial, but it hangs in the air like the scent of incense in a darkened chapel. These include carved stones with crosses, a lead artifact in the shape of a Templar cross found centuries later in the soil, and symbols on boulders that resemble Masonic patterns. None of this individually, unequivocally proves the Templars' presence. Yet, taken together, these details whisper of an ancient lineage of secrecy. For the Freemasons themselves claim descent from the Templar tradition. If Freemasons were later drawn to Oak Island, Perhaps it was because they intuitively sensed their predecessors had been there first. The Templar connection is not a firmly established fact, not a story carved in stone. It is rather a shadow, a conjecture, an intriguing possibility that relentlessly haunts the imagination. But if one listens closely, in every whisper of Oak Island's history, in every tale of hidden and meticulously protected treasure, the echo of the Templars resonates, not just as knights or bankers, but as guardians. Guardians who, perhaps, chose this distant shore as the final resting place for Christendom's most forbidden relics. And if this conjecture is true, then Oak Island is not merely a treasure mystery. It is a mystery of faith, of secret power, and of a legacy the world was never meant to uncover. The night of October 13th, 1307, is forever remembered as the day the Templars fell across France in a meticulously coordinated strike. Royal authority delivered a sudden and devastating blow to the Templar order. The king's men stormed their commanderies, seizing leaders and confiscating vast holdings. Those who dared resist were brutally beaten, shackled, and led away. Those forced under torture to confess to heresy were immediately condemned to death. Thus, the once powerful order, which had served as protector of pilgrims and possessed untold wealth, ceased to exist virtually overnight. However, not all its members were caught. Not all were put to the flame. Historical evidence indicates that in the port city of La Rochelle, the entire Templar fleet mysteriously vanished. Some historians suggest these ships were simply seized by the French crown. Others claim they managed to escape. Under the cloak of night, shrouded in utter darkness, sails were raised, and the vessels carried away the order's treasures. But the true treasure, perhaps, was not gold or precious stones at all. It could have been priceless relics, holy artifacts carrying such danger that neither the church nor the crown could be trusted with their keeping. Imagine these ships sailing into the boundless sea. Their sturdy hulls burdened not only with cargo, but with a great purpose. Where could they have been headed? Perhaps to Scotland, where sympathetic lords and exiled Templars might offer them safe haven, or to Portugal, where the order quietly resurrected under a new name, the Knights of Christ. Or perhaps they ventured even further, beyond the known world, to where absolute secrecy would be entirely guaranteed. If Oak Island's labyrinth was indeed constructed in the early 14th century, this aligns remarkably with that historical period. It could well have been the work of exiled guardians, Templars, determined to preserve what they carried, even if it meant burying their secret beyond the reach of kings, popes, and even human memory itself. One only has to consider the incredible meticulousness with which the island's defenses were constructed. This was not a hasty, slapdash affair. Such construction would have demanded profound planning, colossal labor, and unwavering dedication. To create such a vault would have taken years, perhaps even decades, along with the unyielding discipline for which the Templars were renowned. These were not desperate men scattering coins into holes in the ground. These were true architects of secrecy, guardians who genuinely believed they were serving a higher purpose. And what exactly were they guarding so meticulously? Some researchers speak of ancient manuscripts, lost gospels that would tell a completely different story of Christ, texts too dangerous to survive in medieval Europe. Others whisper of legendary relics, the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or the treasures of Solomon's Temple discovered during the Crusades. But there is an even darker theory. The Templars might have carried proof of a lineage, a bloodline that, if revealed, would undermine the very foundations of ecclesiastical power. Whether relics, records, or revelations, their protection was absolute. To shield their burden from prying eyes, the Templars may have sacrificed their place in history. Their names were tarnished, their order destroyed, and the survivors scattered across the globe. Yet their secret, if Oak Island is indeed their creation, endured in silence beneath the earth and the water's surface. The exiled guardians left behind no statutes, no written testimonies, no known maps. Yet perhaps that was their original intent. For if the treasure they carried was dangerous enough to destroy an entire order, then it was likely too dangerous to ever be revealed. And so the ship passed into legend, and Oak Island whispers of itself as a possible haven, a place where exiled knights might have built not just a cache, but a true sanctuary, a tomb for secrets too grand for the world above. The idea of medieval ships crossing the Atlantic might seem incredible, even fantastical. Nevertheless, history leaves behind tantalizing hints that suggest it was entirely possible. The Templars, after all, were not only valiant warriors and mystics, they were seasoned mariners. Their fleet was one of the largest in Europe, and their dominion over the seas could rival even the great merchant republics of Venice and Genoa. From Mediterranean ports to North Sea harbors, their banners once flew proudly, their vessels carrying pilgrims, grain, and soldiers across vast waters. And so we must ask, when the Templar fleet vanished from La Rochelle in 1307, could some of those ships have sailed west rather than east? The ocean, for medieval Europe, was a frontier that inspired both terror and promised incredible prospects. But even in those distant times, rumors circulated about lands lying beyond the sea. Norse sagas spoke of Vinland, a fertile shore across the Atlantic, where Leif Erikson and his companions had settled centuries earlier. Could the Templars have inherited fragments of these ancient stories? Could sympathetic Normans, connected to the order by trade or oath, have shared their knowledge with the exiled knights? Imagine their voyage. Large cogs and caravels, sturdy and purposeful, gliding silently through the Atlantic night. No banners flew, for secrecy was their surest shield. Their holds, perhaps, were filled not with riches to squander, but with relics to hide, relics the world was not yet ready to see. Guided by the stars and driven by desperate purpose, they crossed the vast silence of the ocean, seeking a shore untouched by papal decree or royal edict. And when land appeared, Nova Scotia, with its myriad coves and islands, it must have seemed to them an ideal sanctuary. Remote, isolated, shrouded in mist and pine forests, it presented a place where a vault could be built, deep enough and hidden enough to last not for years, but for centuries. Some researchers note with surprise the existence of mysterious cartographic images that appeared in European lands long before Christopher Columbus made his famous voyages. These maps, like silent witnesses to long-past eras, unequivocally point to coastlines strikingly similar to the outlines of North America, drawn during a period when, according to conventional understanding, such territories were still completely unknown to European civilization. Are these ancient parchments merely a distant echo of Viking voyages, their daring forays across the cold northern seas? Or were they carefully preserved through a series of secret channels and passed into the hands of powerful orders such as the